QA will catch it before release. It's one of the most common and also seemingly harmless sentences spoken during a sprint. A developer finishes implementing a feature, passes a few basic happy paths, opens a pull request, and pushes the ticket down the pipeline. If there's an edge case missing, or a layout change, or a broken edge case validator, it's fine because there's the QA team at the end of that pipeline and they will catch all the possible problems, so it's all cool. Except it isn't. Because when a team starts using QA as a safety net, developers stop taking responsibility for quality. What was supposed to be a layer of defense becomes an excuse to ship unverified code. Instead of catching bugs early, this mindset creates a culture of sloppy delivery, of endless context switching, and of constant friction between the QA and developers teams. So in this video, we are going to take a look at the moral hazard this kind of software engineering practices actually bring to the table, why such safety nets make developers worse off, and how relying on QA to find bugs actively kills your velocity. So in economics, there's a concept known as a moral hazard. Basically, it occurs when someone is insulated from the consequences of their actions. This, in turn, causes them to behave way more recklessly than they would have if they had to bear the consequences. For example, if you drive a car with no insurance or a poor insurance policy, you check your mirrors twice before changing the lane, and you make double or triple sure at every turn that everything is okay and you are not going to bump into anything in the parking lot, for example. At the same time, if you know fully well that the insurance company is going to cover 100% of any costs, no questions asked, this usually makes people drive faster and pay less attention, because why bother? And the exact same phenomenon happens across the board, also in software engineering teams. When a company builds a separate, dedicated QA department whose sole responsibility or main responsibility is to just manually test and make sure that all the pull requests from the developers are not breaking production, they create a massive moral hazard for developers. The developer is insulated from the consequences of shipping bad code, because if a bug slips to production, it's not seen as the developer pushed a broken code. It's seen as the QA missed a bug in regression. And the moment that shift happens, developer testing degrades rapidly. Developers stop running local sanity checks, stop performing edge cases testing, and stop thinking like real end users that are going to be using the code that they are shipping. Because why waste 10 minutes verifying a complex flow locally when you can just kick the ticket to the QA side of the net and hope for the best? And if there's any bugs, they will find out and they will tell you. And such over-reliance on QA as a kind of a safety net creates this kind of a ping-pong pattern between two opposite teams. And it is one of the most expensive anti-patterns in software delivery. Because let's imagine a developer takes a ticket from the Jira board. It takes them, like, for example, 3 days to develop that. They finish the work on it, they kick it on the side of the QA, and they take something from the backlog. So they switch the context completely. They start working on a feature which is located in a completely different spot inside the system. Then 2 days later, a QA engineer actually takes from the testing column this ticket that was brought to them by the developers, start testing it, run some basic boundary checks, and suddenly they stumble upon some very trivial error, like a null pointer not being handled or something like that. So the feature crashes immediately. So they log it, they add a comment, and they push it back to the developer on the Jira board. But now something peculiar happens, because look at the cost of fixing that bug. The developer is in a completely different spot in their mind right now. They are working on something completely different. So they need to pause the work on that They need to stash their changes. They need to go back to the previous ticket, reread the description, the feature, or whatever they need to actually get into the frame of mind that allows them to work on that again. Then they read the comments from the tester side, they set up the local environment, they fix the null pointer, and they kick it back on the QA side. And so a bug that would have taken the developer 30 seconds to fix while they were still working on it initially locally now takes 3 days, takes a couple of ping-pongs on the Jira board, takes multiple context switches both for the QA and the developer. It costs a pipeline delay, and it costs another round of testing. And we are not sure if there are no more bugs present in the product, because maybe after fixing the null pointer, it turns out that there's more problems inside which weren't accessible before that problem had been fixed. And in such scenario, we do the whole round again. And so it takes even more days, even more pipeline delays, and even more ping pong. Multiply that by 10, 20, 40 tickets on your sprint spread across the developers and the testers, and suddenly your velocity drops off a cliff. Because there's a fundamental truth in manufacturing and software engineering too, which management handily tends to forget. It's that you cannot test quality into a broken product. You can only inspect the defects that are already in it, but after it has been shipped, if it's broken, it stays broken. When QA is treated as a filter at the end of some long convoluted pipeline, it becomes sort of an afterthought. Developers start treating building things and testing things as two completely separate domains done by two completely different sets of people. Developer thinks, my job is to write code that fulfills the Jira acceptance criteria, and QA thinks, my job is to test where the developer messed up. And this creates a needlessly adversarial relationship between these two groups. QA feels like those annoying gatekeepers that are constantly crying wolf and blocking releases because of some minor details, and developers start feeling like QA is just picking on the implementation. And also the QAs feel like they are constantly being shipped some half-assed broken code which they know something is wrong with because of course it hasn't been properly checked before pushing it to the QA. So we have this constant combat between the two groups which should cooperate, which should get along, which have the common goal of shipping good product. The reality is that a dedicated testing phase at the end of the cycle or at the end of the sprint doesn't actually increase quality. It just formalizes the acceptance of low quality work during the development phase. So how do high velocity senior teams actually handle it? How do they fix this problem without getting rid of QA or without letting the production just break? They do this by dismantling the safety net mindset and pushing responsibility back to where the code is being written. First, establish a strict rule that developers own the verification of their own work. Before a ticket moves to any review or testing stage, the developers must prove that the code actually works. This means writing unit or integration tests and performing basic exploratory checks. If a ticket reaches QA and fails on a basic, trivial, obvious happy path scenario, it shouldn't just be logged as a bug. It should be flagged as a process failure on the development side. Second, redefine the role of quality engineers. QA should not be a manual defect catching machine sitting at the end of a long assembly line. Their job is to be quality architects or quality coaches of sorts. They should help developers by providing and designing better test strategies, by performing threat modeling before the actual code is even written, by building test automation architecture and identifying the architectural risk at every step of the way. Because when developers know that there's no safety net at the end just waiting to catch any problems that they may have introduced, they get into a different mindset when providing the features. They write better tests, they test the edge cases, they make sure locally to at least look at the code they are shipping once or twice from the eyes of an end user, and they take pride in shipping code that actually works. Because a safety net is supposed to protect you from the unexpected catastrophical problems, failures which you may not have even foreseen. But it's not supposed to be a kind of a mattress that you just jump onto because you are too lazy to walk down the stairs. If your team is constantly bogged down in endless bug ping pong between dev and QA, take a hard look at your pipeline. Are your QA engineers acting as strategic quality advisors, or have they been turned into an expensive kind of a safety net for catching the bugs and the results of careless code? And I'd love to hear your experiences. Has having a dedicated QA phase actually helped you and your team to ship better, more quality-driven code, or has it just made the developers stop testing their own work? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the Testeroni channel. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, remember to keep on rocking.